Okay, you know how we've been hearing that the last minute swing voters kind of overwhelmingly broke for Trump in the election and not Kamala Harris? Well, I went to a Navigator polling briefing this morning where they tried to get to the bottom of why that happened, and I thought I would share some of their takeaways with you, even though some things can't be captured in polling, like misogyny and racism. So perhaps the single biggest takeaway was just when they talked to these focus group voters, some of whom were base voters, but a lot of whom were swing voters who made up their minds sometimes the day of the election. Their views of the economy were overwhelmingly terrible. They were even more negative than views of the economy were during the coronavirus pandemic. 70% of the people they talked to said the economy was terrible, and 76% of these swing voters. And this just created huge headwinds for anybody running on the Democratic ticket. They just were associated with this economy that people just think sucks. And by the way, all of these voters really blamed Biden specifically. He was deeply underwater in this area, like 53% underwater negative approval rating for his handling of the economy. Kamala Harris was just tarred with that brush whether she liked it or not. We already know that Harris lost ground with almost every group, but especially with young men and voters of color, especially non-college educated. He also lost a lot of ground with so-called moderates. Biden won them by 21 points. She won them by only 8. Trump won on macroeconomics. That's like the big economic picture, while Harris tied on reducing costs and won on looking out for the middle class. So this is all, again, really hard to understand, but in some ways people felt that she would be better at looking out for the middle class, but that he would be better on the overall economic picture. Now, this is important. Harris won on abortion, she won on democracy, she won on climate. In those areas, voters absolutely thought she was better, but Trump won on immigration and economy, and those in the end turned out to be people's biggest priorities by a lot. And here's another slide showing that immigration and the economy were decisively the top 2 reasons people went for Trump in the end. Now, this is right or wrong. Not saying it's right, but that is what people thought and did. This slide is really interesting. It was Harris's support of Bidenomics, of Biden's economic policies, that these voters just did not want. Really a deal breaker for a lot of them. And I thought this was notable. These swing voters who in the end went for Trump, they were more concerned that Kamala Harris would be a continuation of Biden-era economy than that she was too liberal. So for all the people who say, oh, she was too woke, no, that wasn't it at all. And in fact, in some of the crosstabs, you can find, like, they don't care about, for example, trans issues at all. They cared about the economy and they didn't want her being more of Biden. This was very interesting. Voters agreed with progressive economic views. They agree with democratic approaches to all of the economic questions, but they saw their personal financial situation negatively, and it is really negative for a lot of people. So this is an understandable sort of conundrum for people. They like the ideas that Democrats put forward much more, but in the immediate moment, they need relief. And Trump was promising it, so they went for Trump, even though he's not going to deliver it. Spoiler alert. Interestingly, the swing voters who decided this election were more likely to get their news from social media. Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok were the most frequented by swing voters, followed by Snapchat. Those are some of the big takeaways. Now, of course, again, I think without really knowing how many people just voted for Trump because they couldn't tolerate the idea of a female and or black president, we're just not going to know. I do know that they voted for Trump in terms of him being a, quote, strong and decisive leader over Kamala Harris by 10 points. Now, there is no reason to think that he is stronger or more decisive than her, other than the fact that she's a girl and he's not. So look, it played a huge part. But some of the other elements were the things that were discussed in this polling. It doesn't help us feel any better, but it helps us begin to understand what actually happened, or at least part of it. I hope you found it interesting, and if you did, let me know in the comments, and I'll bring you more polling briefings like this.